Welcome to the Skills World Live radio show, sponsored by OneFile, a world where everyone is learning for their future. Stay tuned for all the news, views and interviews in association with FE News.
Hello, I'm Tom Bewick. Welcome to the brand new series of Skills World Live. And in a week, when 9 million school children, including thousands of FE students, went back to their colleges, the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, warned us that the pandemic isn't over yet. Still, with spring in the air and the vaccination programme moving apace, you can't help but feel that our days of social house arrest are at last coming to an end. We also heard this week from the great leader, aka the Embattled Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson. He let it be known that he's contemplating extending the school day and reducing the number of term time holidays, which for some in the trade union movement has been about as popular as Piers Morgan on the subject, the Duchess of Sussex. Talking of the brothers, the Shadow Education Minister, Wes Streeting MP, was quick out of the traps this week, accusing ministers of robbing Peter to pay Paul, revealing in that half of the student catch-up monies is not new, but recycled from existing departmental budgets. Yeah, that led the Guardian columnist Michael Rosen to assert recently that it wasn't the pupils that needed catch-up support, but the great leader himself. Moving on. Isn't it just fan-dabby-dozy to be back in the DJ presenter hot seat? Okay, that was a terrible Cranky's impression, wasn't it? Indeed, whether you're listening to my dulcet tones via audio in playback at one of the popular podcasting sites, or you're just so excited to be with us live, watching my round radio face on our new channel at skillsworldlive.com. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, welcome back to the only online radio show connecting the world of FE.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show with Tom Bewick.
In this new season, we're going to continue with that winning formula of informed chat and topical debate, with, of course, a bit of light entertainment as well, just to help keep everyone's spirits up. Stay tuned, folks, because after the news, I'll be talking to the Manchester-based award-winning entrepreneur, Susanna Lawson of OneFile, that brilliant e-portfolio company that will be sponsoring us this season. Today's hot topic is all about the recent Chancellor's budget and whether it's really delivering for further education. Join me with 4 senior sector leaders who will be sharing their insights on whether that golden boy of the Treasury, Dishy Rishi, has come up trumps this time. And whatever you're doing this evening, do not miss the closing segment when I'll be catching up with one of the country's recently unearthed national treasures. I'm talking, of course, about the internet sensation and local government guru, Jackie Weaver. But next, let's kick off tonight's musical menu by playing those Manchester legends from the 90s, the Stone Roses, and this rather flowing track. It's called Waterfall.
Day Partners works across the UK education and skills sector to transform leadership and inspire societal change. We do this through executive search, recruitment, and board development services. If your organisation requires support to appoint great leaders through a thorough and national search campaign, or perhaps your board has a skills gap which needs filling, contact Peridot for an informal discussion about how we can help you. We love what we do, and we do it with passion. So search online for Peridot Partners or email education@peridotpartners.co.uk.
Are you wrestling with managing cost and resources whilst delivering a high-quality endpoint assessment experience? Does your current IT solution meet new regulatory arrangements and ways of working? Worried about data security? Need to gain Ofqual recognition? Creatio's helped more companies through the recognition process than anyone else. And because it underpins all aspects of a qualifications lifecycle, more regulated organisations use Creatio's system than any other. Contact Creatio. See how we can help.
The exams watchdog Ofqual told a group of MPs this week that qualifications may have to continue being adapted well into the future. The interim chief regulator, Simon Liebus, told a parliamentary committee that public exams in summer 2022 may also need to be revised, perhaps along the lines initially planned for this year, before the government took the decision to cancel all summer exams. Following concern raised by MPs of permanent grade inflation being baked into Qual's results like GCSEs and A-levels, Liebus said that a policy debate was needed to assess whether in these post-COVID times qualifications in future should be approached differently. In other news, the government's social mobility czar, Stephen Cooper, has said the public is right to be concerned about growing social inequalities. Launching the Social Mobility Commission's latest barometer, the survey found that 4 in 5 adults now believe there is a large gap between different social classes, and over half the public think the pandemic has increased social inequality. Finally, the schools and FE inspection body Ofsted has announced a change in focus of its activities from next week. Physical inspections have largely been curtailed because of the pandemic. However, the Quango said it would be ending its progress monitoring visits of Grade 3 and Grade 4 providers to focus its work on carrying out monitoring visits to those new training providers who have not yet received a recent inspection.
Contact us at Skills World Live. We want to hear from you. Email skillsworld@fenews.co.uk. Follow us on Twitter at Skills World Live, at Tom Bewick. Use the hashtag Skills World Live. Call us on 02032 900 111. That's 02032 900 111.
Absolutely delighted now to be joined by the co-founder and chief executive of OneFile, Susanna Lawson, beaming in from Manchester. Hi, Susanna.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone.
How you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, really excited to be part of the radio show.
Yeah, I mean, God, who would have thought starting the pandemic when I was actually doing a nightly show up in my man cave, and here we are sort of over 80 episodes later, and it's going visual, and we've got so many listeners, and there's so much interest out there in the sector, and it's just fantastic to have a tech firm like OneFile on this journey with us. I mean, connecting the world of FE, that's what OneFile is all about as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Our platform's been used by over 1.2 million users, and we're embedded in vocational training. It's something we're incredibly passionate about, so we were really excited about this opportunity to work with you guys.
Yeah, great. As you say, over 1 million users of the OneFile platform. And a little Dicky Bird tells me that you've celebrated a certain 16th birthday, not you personally, by the way, Susanna, but OneFile has hit Sweet 16. Just tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so 16 years ago, in this month, we registered our first learner onto OneFile. Yeah, so that was when we were based in our back bedroom in Manchester.
Wow.
And obviously come a hell of a long way since then. We're now based in the centre of Manchester with a team of about 80. So it's been a fascinating roller coaster of a ride. It's been brilliant. Yeah.
I mean, you're almost like the Northwest sort of version of a Google, YouTube, the sort of classic from a garage, from a back room, from rags to riches. You've built this business up, haven't you, with your partner over that 16 years. Those million users or so haven't just happened overnight. But what's really inspired you and kept you going through all those years then in terms of building OneFile as a company?
I think it's the fact that we're making such a difference. There was a real sort of light bulb moment for me when I took our son to do a triage at the hospital. He had an outpatient's appointment, and there was one of these support assistants there doing the triage, and she saw my OneFile lanyard, and she said, I've used OneFile. Do you work for OneFile? And she said, I was really disengaged with learning, and I did my level 2 on OneFile. Absolutely loved it. And then I asked to do my level 3, and she's just been accepted at Salford University to do a degree in social work. And it was like, wow, this is what we're doing. We're really able to change people's lives. And during the pandemic, it's become even more apparent.
Yeah, and also, of course, the whole funding rules around apprenticeships, all the assessment methodologies, all the accountability now that government obviously expects for all the public funding that goes into apprenticeships. I mean, OneFile actually just helps cut out a huge amount of faff, doesn't it, both for employers and for learners?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only does it make it more engaging, but it just makes the bureaucracy of running a vocational funded qualification a lot easier for the company or the college or the university themselves, or for the employer. And then for everybody using it, everything's just there at a press of a button, a click of a button, you're able to see where everybody is. And, for audit purposes, it's fantastic as well. So a lot easier all around.
Yeah, great. I just want to talk a little bit about the partnership between Skills World Live and OneFile in terms of these upcoming 20 episodes we're committed to working on together, starting on the 11th of March with an episode which is going to look at the Chancellor's budget and has it delivered for FE. Obviously, there's a lot of talk in the sector right now about ensuring that the sector does get that long-term investment in skills. Presumably, you would support that call as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's just absolutely the right thing to do. There's other countries out there that have lifelong learning budgets for their adults. Why should funding be finished at 18? We're like, as you said earlier, our vision is a world where everyone's learning for the future. Even at my ripe old age of 45, I learn every single day, and I'll continue learning. And if I had a budget from the government to aid with that would be absolutely fantastic. So everybody should have that opportunity really to continue their learning for as long as they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the era of a job for life, 40 years of your life for 40 weeks, 40 hours a week. That's all gone, hasn't it? All those certainties, and not least, of course, with the pandemic, we're going to have to really think carefully about how we rebuild post-COVID, and we do get that genuine sort of lifelong learning society. Now, look, a big part of the podcasting show is that we don't take ourselves too seriously. Obviously, it's great to interview all these sector leaders, ministers, members of parliament, thought leaders. That's a big part of what Skills World Live, the radio show, is about. And I know that's going to be even better now working with your team at OneFile with some of the ideas and guests that they're going to be generating. But of course, we're also launching as part of the new series, as part of the music entertainment in the show, the OneFile Tune of the Week, coming from Manchester, or is it Madchester? Tune as in CHOON. That's over to you and your team to decide to tell me what to play each week. Have you got any thoughts about the kind of tracks? So many bands coming out of Manchester that you might put my way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're going to do is actually put it out to the team to come up with some ideas. We're going to look at the theme of every week, and then we're going to come up with some tunes that meet the theme. So maybe for the budget, something like money, 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 something like that. So we're going to go for something along the theme of what the debate is going to be about that week. And then we're going to put it out to social media or one of our customers and get them to vote on their favourite. And then that's the one we'll be putting forward to you.
Fantastic. I'm going to look forward to playing it. Indeed, we've even got a jingle for that. It is the One File Tune of the Week. Now, look, just one final question for you, which is still on the music scene in Manchester. So what were your favourite bands then growing up, coming out of Manchester?
Goodness, in Manchester, obviously all the old favourites, obviously Oasis, Happy Mondays, The Smiths, Joy Division, all of those ones. But then also I'm a bit of a pop girl. I like all kinds of music, so I'm a bit of a Take That. I'd always go and see Take That.
Nothing wrong. No shame in liking a bit of Take That.
Really eclectic taste.
I know.
I'll go and see Red Hot Chili Peppers and Foo Fighters, and then a bit of pop as well. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. That's the way I take it.
Indeed, which is why what we say about Skills Live, the radio show, is it's great tunes from the 80s, 90s and the 2000s. So hopefully we've got something in there for everyone. Like you, I'm really into a lot of those sort of trendy bands that came out of Manchester and Liverpool in the 90s, part of the whole Britpop scene. Definitely love the Stone Roses, love the Happy Mondays. But like you, I mean, if Take That is your guilty pleasure, Morton Harkett and Aha is my guilty pleasure from the 80s. Still like the old rocker.
I had his poster up and gave him a little kiss every night.
Fantastic. Well, look, that's about all we got time for, Susanna, but great to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time to come on to the Skills World Live radio show. Tell us all about One File, about the new series, working with you. We're so excited and looking forward to it. That's Susanna Lawson, everyone, from One File.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thanks, everybody.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show. Great music from the 80s, 90s and 2000s. Time now for the One File Tune of the Week.
That was our opening One File Tune of the Week. as voted on by Twitter poll. The track you heard there was Dirty Cash, Money Talks by Stevie Vincent, first released in 1989. And several times since. Don't forget, if you want to say in which tune of the week I should hit play each time the show goes on air, then simply follow the One File and Skills World Live Twitter accounts, where a choice of 3 songs will be made available to vote on each week, closely aligned with the topic of each of these programmes. Talking to the voters and Money Talks, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, delivered his second annual budget last week. National debt, we were told, has now exceeded an eye-watering £2 trillion. To give you some idea of the scale of what that really means, it equates to a debt of £68,000 for every taxpayer in the country. And in the time I just took to say all of that, the national debt increased by another £5,000. The Chancellor also announced the extension of the coronavirus job retention scheme until September. And although the spending announcements on skills were few and far between, we did learn that an additional £126 million is to be spent to boost traineeships for young people, including a doubling of the wage incentive to £3,000 for employers taking on new hires as apprentices. Now, joining us down the line to reflect on all things money and the budget, we're joined by the Chief Exec of the Association of Colleges, David Hughes, and Kirstie Donnelly, the boss of the City and Guilds Group and the co-chair of the Federation of Awarding Bodies. Hi to you both.
Hi.
Hi, Tom.
David, let's come to you first. Why do you think the Chancellor chose to only mention FE colleges, I think twice in the Treasury Red Book that accompanied the budget announcement?
Well, I think the budget was very much focused on 2 things, really, wasn't it? One was about the continued emergency funding that kind of have added up to that enormous debt. And he has spent £350 billion extra in the last 12 months, some of which has come to our sector. And talking about how that will continue through this year, a bit worryingly, perhaps not into next year, and that there's a big question mark about whether that's realistic. And the other thing he was doing was signalling the kind of longer-term plans he's got to continue to cut funding at departmental level, which is worrying, and some of the taxation ideas he's got. What we shouldn't forget is in the spending review, which was only in late November of last year, he did put another 700 million revenue into colleges and quite a lot of capital. So we didn't really expect much money nor much reference to colleges actually in this budget.
Yeah, OK. Well, perhaps let's just sort of come on to those investments that have been made already and the extent to which they even touch the sides in terms of the lost investment. You can argue that we had a decade between 2010 and 2020. Kirstie, I mean, you've called in particular for more action now around the pandemic, the crisis, in particular around reskilling. Did this budget deliver in that regard?
Well, I think it's, as David just said, Tom, I think over the last few months we've seen the Chancellor put out various initiatives. And so in that respect, that I think there's already been a number of schemes that we can build on, and he's clearly accepting and expecting to continue. I think the budget did put an emphasis, didn't it, on employer incentives and obviously talked about apprenticeships and flexi apprenticeships. So in that respect, you might argue there was a more than tenuous link back to what you're getting at here. Although I have to say, I think what probably did disappoint me the most, and it's been a continued theme throughout this whole period of short-term incentives and indeed what's going to happen in the longer term, is there just wasn't enough. In fact, it was completely vacant on adult workers. And we know that whilst obviously this pandemic is, of course, impacting youth employment, and it's going to continue to impact youth employment, there are also adult workers and adult unemployed who are being badly impacted now and will be more so when we do finally see furlough end.
David, I mean, just coming back to your point about this budget, there were spending announcements around more capital for the sector. Indeed, there was £400 million announced a couple of years ago to increase the so-called base rate for 16 to 19-year-olds. But of course, when you delve really deep into those figures, and particularly when you look at it across the last sort of decade and a half, what you discover is we're not really spending any more on FE capital than we were over a decade ago. And in fact, if you were to factor in things like the educational maintenance allowances that were available in the first part of the century, the 16 to 19 rate in real terms is still less than where it was over a decade ago. So to what extent is that really setting up the sector for the kind of rhetoric that we've heard around investment in recent years from ministers?
Oh, look, let's be really clear. You're absolutely right. We're a long, long, long way behind where we should be. And we're probably several billion pounds down on where the sector would have been if funding had stayed in line with inflation, let alone increases. So there's a long, long way to go. Colleges still don't deliver enough hours to young people, nor does full sixth forms, because the funding isn't adequate compared to OECD countries. There's not enough. There's not
21% cut in real terms in the last decade.
Yeah, there's not enough support for students outside of the classroom. There's not enough enrichment. Teacher pay in colleges lags a long way behind schools and universities and others. So there's loads of problems. And on the adult side, Kirstie's absolutely right. We've got such a long way to go. The adults spend more than halved over the last decade, and the increases we've seen, even with the National Skills Fund, are just nowhere near what we actually need for the long term. I think I've got a bit of hope. There is, I think, an ambition in government to look at that rebalancing between FE and HE that Philip Auger talked about in the post-18 review, and I'm expecting that to happen in the spending review later this year, and I think that could be significant. There's growth in level 4-5, which could be significant, and I think Rishi's got a bit of a track record of putting money outside of budget. So the work on catch-up or education recovery is another opportunity we want to look at.
Yeah.
Tom, if I may just come in,
please
Tom, just commenting on what David just said there. As David said, looking in real terms, even pre-pandemic, we know that the adult budget is taken in real terms a 35% hit. So, we're way behind, even notwithstanding the impact of the pandemic. I think you've heard me talk before about this sort of act now and short-term opportunities to do that. What I think we need to be looking at is where do we actually help solutions that engage those industries that have been worst hit now, sort of the bricks to mortar retail, travel, hospitality. There are so many opportunities for us to help people who are maybe still just about in work through furloughing or have recently lost their job because as things have come back, their jobs haven't been available. What are we doing to use some of that short-term funding opportunity to join up the dots and help people transition from one, say, decimated industry into areas where we know there are growth and we know there are skills required? And I think that's what's frustrating me most about all the programmes that have been announced since this all happened, let alone the recent budget. There is so much more we could be doing now using the resources that we've got and making those links. And I think that's what we're not doing quickly enough.
Yeah. And as you say, I suppose for those listening in the sector, a lot of the frustration will be around the fact that from the point of view of, the rhetorics that come out of the Department for Education, FE's never enjoyed, shall we say, so much sunshine. It's been fantastic the last couple of years to hear MPs of all parties talk up the importance of FE. But you can't help but feel just when we get to that point of these big national moments, whether it's budgets. David, you mentioned the spending review there, and I think, rightly, the sector looks to that cavalry coming over the hill, hopefully, in terms of investment. But what kind of concerns me when I look at the Treasury Red Book, and that's obviously the Treasury and the OBR forecasting out public expenditure for government departments over the next 5 years up to 2026. The so-called, use the jargon, total managed expenditure, which is just another way of the government saying this is how much money we're actually going to give to government departments. They're only estimating average increase of about 1.5% on top of the DfE's current budget baseline. That doesn't really set up the spending review, does it, very well for anything like the scale of investment that's needed?
No, it doesn't. And I'm as worried about that as you are, I think. There's something like £16 billion of cuts they've got to fund in order to honour the schools' increased budget and the health increased budget. So there are lots of problems ahead, and I think that's why lots of commentators are a bit sceptical about whether his plans really do add up. I think this rebalancing between HE and FE might be something that will help if they change some of the terms of the loans in HE. That actually does free up some cash in the short term, and DfE I think are quite confident about that. But I go back to what Kirstie was saying. I'm just look at the traineeship funding. You kind of go, that's really good news, isn't it? But actually, who's eligible for it and who's actually able to use traineeship money, and how does it fit with what employers want? It doesn't. If you look at this from an employer perspective, it's confusing and difficult, and traineeships need quite a long placement, and employers aren't in a position to offer that.
Exactly.
Individuals need to live while they're doing a traineeship. Well, how do they do that? Because they can't claim universal credit at the same time. So
indeed,
I'm not even sure the money will get used that's been announced.
Yeah. Of course, as ever with government funding, it all gets sort of put down these silo shoots, which often by the time it gets to the front line, as you say, is disjointed and doesn't really help. I mean, final word to you, Kirstie. Reference there to universal credit and the sort of Department for Work and Pensions side of the house. I mean, do you think there could be more joining up between the Department for Education, the Department for Work and Pensions? Because there is, billions are going into these kickstart schemes and subsidies, wage subsidy support for the under 25s. Meanwhile, we've got a rise in the number of NEETs. 800,000 under the age of 25. Do you think there's just a bit of good old-fashioned joining up here needed?
Absolutely, Tom. I mean, as David was saying then, I was just sort of wryly smiling to myself, as we all do, and thinking, we've said it many times before, certainly pre-pandemic, but this should be the moment where we absolutely now start to look at long-term for how we connect all the dots of employment, welfare, skills and education, because that's the only way we're actually going to get to the longer-term growth and productivity we need. And let's be honest, if there's any way of helping the economy, or the only way to help the economy, you might say, is to increase productivity via employment, good employment, and focus on getting people into areas where we know there are going to be jobs and there's future skill needs. That deals with both the economic issue and it also deals with social impact. But the only way that will happen, and you're right, it is just good old-fashioned departments sitting around the table, working, of course, with the sector and the experts in the sector, of which there are many of us who are willing to help that happen, to join up those dots between employment, welfare and skills.
Okay, well, let's end on that positive and constructive note. As ever, it's always good to hear the thoughts of two titans from the FE sector. I'm talking, of course, about David Hughes, Chief Executive Association of Colleges, and Kirstie Donnelly at City and Guilds and Fab. Thanks to you both for coming on.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show with Tom Bewick.
OneFile is the best apprenticeship e-portfolio in the world. But did you know it's ideal for all kinds of vocational training, including traineeships? OneFile is very flexible, so it has everything you need to deliver, manage and track traineeship progress.
We're currently using OneFile for all our traineeship learners. They love it, and so do we. It's fabulous. Thank you, OneFile.
To find out more about OneFile, head to onefile.co.uk and book a demo with a member of the team.
Welcome back to Skills World Live. Just before the break, we kicked off tonight's big question, asking, has the Chancellor's recent budget delivered for FE? It comes at a time when the number of workers in adult education has halved in recent years. Let's talk now to two FE sector leaders who will help us continue to dissect whether Dishy Rishi and his Treasury team have served up a decent meal for adult skills and the lifelong learning agenda. In this conversation with me is David Gallagher, Chief Executive of NCFE, and the all-round adult skills champion and boss of Holex, Susan Pember. Very good day to you both.
Hello, Tom. Good to be here.
Hi there. David, let's come to you first. Just want to sort of run by you this proposition that have we really seen now all of the FE skills-related funding announcements? I mean, the government has put in additional money, Lifetime Skills Guarantee, National Skills Fund. Do you think that's it now for the sector?
I don't think it will be, Tom, or at least I hope it's not. So if I refer back to the skills white paper, the skills for jobs white paper that we saw recently, in the lead into that, we heard about radical steps that would be taken. And my view on that is that there wasn't really anything radical. Whilst it was lots of things we already knew about and some positive new initiatives, without a comprehensive spending review, without a 3-year settlement, I think it fell short of being radical. So I would hope that now that we've got a budget and then maybe going forward, hopefully some more certainty around public spending, that there will be possibly a part 2 and then maybe even a part 3 in terms of how tertiary education, FE skills is going to shape up over the next few years. I will be a bit disappointed if that's it. One of the other points, just to raise initially on that, I'm still hugely disappointed that there's just appears to be such a disconnect across some key government departments, so particularly DWP and of course DFE, where we seem to be, rolling out some quite large scale, policy changes and programs. Obvious connect at that level, which I think for a long time we're talking about integrated employment and skills, and with the labour market that we're facing down, we're going to need it more than ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing, isn't it, to see that lack of joined up thinking, and indeed it was something that I just discussed with our previous guests, with David Hughes and Kirstie Donnelly, particularly that link between the Department for Education and the Department for Work and Pensions. Sue, coming to you, I read here there's been over 400,000 redundancies since the pandemic began. Certainly the lockdown began in March last year. And that's even before furlough has formally ended. I mean, that will be extended now until September. On this figure as well of adult education in terms of workers participating, that's halved in the last few years. I mean, this hasn't really been a great budget for adults, has it?
Yeah, taken upon it's sort of the joined upness when you say you've got a good budget for adults. If you sort of dissect it, it's not just the budget, but put the budget with the FE white paper. There are, lots of new and quite exciting things. Whether you agree or not with the boot camps, that's new, is intensive. It could do a lot of good for some people. We've got the traineeship as an expansion. We've got the lifetime guarantee. We've got, Kickstart. We've got more money for apprenticeships. Actually, there's a good story there. However, it might not have been the story that we felt we need. The story I would have liked to seen is just an announcement that said, if you're 16 to 18, there's a place for you this September. Don't worry. There's somewhere for you to go. Yeah? Don't worry about the funding stream. There's somewhere for you to go. And if you're an adult, and you're low skilled and you're unemployed, and you might be one of those 2 million that'll be unemployed, come October, there's something for you. You haven't got to work it out yourself. You're just going to turn up at your local college or your local adult ed centre, and there'll be something for you. They will sort out what you need in your career. But what we've got is a real plethora of initiatives that don't feel very joined up, and they don't feel very client orientated. It's really difficult to work out which one fits each person. However, if they could do that coordination quickly, if they could do the media around it, saying there is a place for you, that they could find some money for adults that don't fit into these categories, really the low-skilled ones. Actually, I think it's not a bad budget, mainly because it doesn't really cut anything. I know there's 1% right at the back in the numbers, right? But at this moment of time, it keeps the existing budget and it does give some new money. However, it's not really client-friendly.
Yeah. So, David, is this a challenge? Because I think Sue raises a very good point. When you actually go into the detail, not least look at the Treasury Red Book, and you look at all the sort of, silo pots of funding, whether that's DFE, whether that's DWP, whether that's Kickstart, whether that's money into apprenticeships, the doubling of the incentive, which will, of course, be available to adults as well as younger apprentices. There's this lifetime skills guarantee. There is a lot of money sort of swashing around. Is it as simple as a bit of a marketing communications technique that tries to wrap all that up under some kind of umbrella offer that, as Sue is saying, at least, for Joe Public out there, and frankly, even for people like us that work in the sector, we live and breathe this stuff every day, and we struggle to understand all the different bits of it. Is it as simple as that, or is something more fundamental needed?
So I think it's a bit of both for me, Tom, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So if you think about, I suppose, the unholy trinity of post-Brexit, what does that mean for the economy? What does that mean for the labour market? What does that mean for skills needs? Which occupations are going to be in the ascendancy and which are going to go the other way? So that's sort of almost the first part of that. Post-pandemic, what does that mean in terms of labour market and occupations? Again, what will be in decline and what may grow. And then Industry 4.0, so automation, AI, how that's going to change skills needs in the labour market. And you really have got what could be at the worst end of it. And I know this is looking at it quite pessimistically, a real unholy trinity in terms of impact on what the labour market looks like, what skills are needed and at what level. And we could end up with a massive mismatch in terms of supply and demand. So I think the thing that for me that is missing, that needs to be a bit more strategic, well, a lot more strategic actually, possibly a bit radical, is thinking about how we think that forward and address that in terms of the supply of skills. So that's, the programs, the provision, and ultimately the people with the skills that are able to go into the labour market. So thinking a bit more strategically and radically there, whilst also doing, I suppose, the incremental stitching together of what's out there already. There's programs that if you scratch the surface, the three-word title is different, but you get underneath it, it looks pretty similar. And how many of these programs require work experience placements, for example, which is admirable. I think we can all get behind the value of the employability skills, the network capital, the reference that comes with a work experience placement. But I've got no idea how particularly smaller employers are going to be able to accommodate the volume that's needed for the programs and that provision that are out there. So if we think forward in terms of, well, what does that mean in terms of what's going to go spent, unspent? Where are the too many opportunities? Where are the too few? I think there's some things that are just a bit too similar. And then, just one minor point. Lifetime guarantee comes with debt. How many families, how many homes can take on more debt right now? How many? Not many, because there's lots of people and communities struggling. So the notion of debt is really worrying, actually, for lots of families and homes. So I think we need to think there as well.
Indeed, that old chestnut maintenance, particularly for adults, who've got often other financial commitments. It's not simply a case of, as it is often with many young people, you live at home and you can go into college. Look, I just want to get final reflections then from you both in terms of looking ahead then in the future. I think the sector is still putting quite a bit of store by the comprehensive spending review. David Hughes said to me earlier, Rishi does have a reputation as Chancellor for sort of pulling rabbits out of hats and announcing money actually outside of the formal spending, the budget and other kind of big financial events. What are you looking for, for your part of the sector then from that spending review? What would really do it for you? David, to start with you, and then we'll come on to Sue's final thoughts.
So it's really difficult because we have levels of spending, levels of debt ultimately that we haven't seen since the Second World War. So
£2 trillion.
and so there are no easy choices here, and how much do we take on before we're saddling multiple generations with that debt? So it's tough. So it's not necessarily that I'm looking for more spend. I suppose what I would look for is a bit more precise, incisive investment in the areas that are going to make the biggest difference. So we've got the long heralded higher technical qualifications will come through. When they do, will the funding be there to support that? And let's not, say, well, let's spend less on uni and more on HTQs. Actually, let's really drive up market demand there. So I think it's about understanding, the starting point of learners, communities, particularly, disadvantaged groups or newly disadvantaged groups because of how the labour market will change. We're going to suddenly see professionals are highly out of work. What's going to be right for them? So we need a more incisive and nuanced approach going forward, not necessarily more spending.
Yeah. We certainly do. In post-COVID, we need to prepare for a labour market with jobs that, frankly, have gone and they'll never come back again. But then there's also new opportunities. Sue, final word to you. On adult skills then, what's the thing that's going to really carry on getting you excited and getting out of bed?
Well, first of all, with the budget came the other document, Build Back Better, or Build Back Better and Bolder. In that document, there were quite a few statements about basic skills, about the need for better English, maths and digital and language. I'm holding on to that. That means the centre of government, needs number 10, the Treasury, have recognised that. And we do need to put more investment into that area of work as a country, because we've still got 9 million people with poor basic skills and we need to improve them if our productivity is ever to gain. So I am hoping that the spending review will recognise that narrative and now do something for that. But I also want to say we don't have to keep on looking to government to do things, right?
Good point.
Collectively, we're a big force for change. We've got large budgets, ranging now up to about, if you put it all collectively with the levy together, over £3 billion. We can make it work. So what we need to do is rise to that challenge and not just keep on saying, we want government to take the lead. We can all collectively take the lead. So my challenge and call out is come on, we can do it for ourselves at this moment of time. We've got quite a bit of money and we can use it in a better way.
Can I clap, Tom?
To end on. Yeah, alas, we've run out of time, but Susan Pember of Holex, and David Gallagher of NCFE. Always fascinating to hear what you've got to say. Thanks for joining us this evening.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show with Tom Bewick.
Oh, we do love a bit of Fleetwood Mac on this show. Just ask our digital producer, Ellie Hansen. She absolutely adores them. The song you just heard there was called Everywhere. Don't forget, if you like any of the tracks from our unique weekly offering of Connecting the World of FE, then simply access them from our Spotify song list. Just search for the Skills World Live radio show. Get your ears around some great tunes from the 80s, 90s and 2000s. Now, it's that time again when we will shortly have to bring this first episode of the new season to a close, unfortunately. But who better to help us reach that particular milestone with me than the none other internet sensation, Jackie Weaver, who joins us on the line now. Hello, Jackie.
Hello there, Tom.
Thanks so much for coming on. Now, look, when I was talking to my partner last night, and she was very excited when I told Jackie Weaver was coming on my radio show, I said, look, if there's one question you're going to ask her, what should it be? And she said to me, look, can you find out what music she likes? Because that's something she hasn't found out about you so far. So go on then, tell us your favourite tune. Do you like a bit of Fleetwood Mac?
Karen's listening, so yes, I love them.
Yeah. Karen Dawes is listening, and Ellie Hansen, our digital producer, who absolutely adores them. But did I read somewhere, though, that you like the Rolling Stones?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of people of my age, our music tastes kind of develop over the years, but there's always a nostalgic soft spot for a time in our lives where we imagined ourselves to be, I don't know, young, fabulous, etc. And for me, that would be round about the time of the Rolling Stones, late Beatles, Thin Lizzy. Yeah, those. But then I've gathered others along the way. I think the most, I'm often asked about Britney Spears. Sorry, Britney. It was your image I was thinking of rather than your music. And I guess for me, my current favourite, again, perhaps not of today, is Amy McDonald.
Right.
Yeah. Lovely.
Great. Fantastic. Great artist. Now, look, Jackie, just in case there are people tuning in who, I don't know, if they've been in a nuclear bunker or something, cut off from the outside world during the third national lockdown in the last 3 months. I mean, if they haven't heard of Handforth District Council and Jackie Weaver, where the hell have they been? But we'll just roll a bit of tape here just to bring everybody up to speed.
Can't see Jackie Weaver.
Who's this woman? There.
Right, we'll start the meeting, and I want to repeat what I said at the beginning of the last meeting, that this meeting has not been called according to the law. The law has been broken.
It has been properly
Will
called.
you please let the chairman
Mrs. Weaver, please.
speak?
If you disrupt this meeting, I will have to remove you from it.
You can't.
It's only the chairman who can remove people from a meeting. You have no authority here, Jackie Weaver. No authority at all.
She's just kicked him out.
I
Just a minute. No, she's kicked him out. Don't. She's kicked him out. Don't.
This is a meeting called by two councillors.
Illegally?
They now elect a chairman.
No, they can't, because the vice chair's here. I take charge. Read the standing orders. Read them and understand them.
So, Handforth District Council, Jackie, that infamous meeting that took place in December last year. I mean, you did so well just to keep it together under a sort of barrage, really, of misogyny and all sorts of personal comments and attacks. I mean, how did you manage it?
Well, I think, clearly I'm often played clips from that, so it kind of refreshes my memory and makes me review what I heard that night at Handforth Parish Council. And it was, I guess it was, even for me, and I'm kind of used to being called in when things have gone wrong and trying to put them right. But that level of anger and hostility, I think was what was surprising. But I was very focused on what we were trying to achieve that night. So although it always makes me smile when people say anything to do with politics, particularly, it's not personal. It's always personal.
Yes.
So, it's about trying to work on yourself so that even if it's intended to be personal, you're able to redirect it away from you. So it's about the issue rather than the personal. And for me, that's what the issue was. We're having.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, can you just sort of clear up one thing around the so-called standing orders? There was this big debate, wasn't there, about whether or not you had the authority. Famously, Jackie Weaver has no authority here, although she certainly does on the Skills World Live radio show. But if you just sort of clear up that piece of, sort of Byzantine local government regulation for us, in what capacity were you sort of hosting that meeting that particular night?
I think there's kind of like 3 points on that one. First of all, a lot of parish council legislation hasn't actually been tested in court cases. So until it's formally tested, you will always get opinion. Secondly, standing orders really are a document, and a fairly accessible document, I hope, where we pull together, in effect, the constitution of the council. I did read the standing orders. I did understand them. But their standing orders are completely silent on what you do if the challenge or the trouble comes from the chairman themselves. So actually invoking standing orders was meaningless.
Right. Yeah. And indeed, there was a sort of surreal moment where the meeting hadn't even started. And people were saying you can't raise a point of order because the meeting hasn't started. But just on the more sort of general issue about skills in local government, for want of a better term, how do we ensure? I guess two things. How do we ensure actually, whether it's at parish council level, at county council level, at unitary authority level, that we get a much more diverse representation coming into local government? Because I think anyone watching that programme would say it was, that particular council meeting would say it was full of the kind of, male, stale, pale, middle-aged, well, a bit like me, really. So how do we get younger people into local government? And what skills do you think they need to develop once they're in that particular role?
Okay, first part first. It wasn't me that said this. I'm simply repeating it, but it has some resonance for me, and that is, communities have the parish and town councils they deserve. Mm-hmm. So if you are not showing any interest, if you are not bearing witness, if you don't get involved, then can you really bitch about what you've got at the other end? So, in order to improve your parish council, you need to get involved in some way. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a councillor yourself. But if you do nothing else, at least you can bear witness. In terms of skills, well, I guess the whole point of local democracy at town and parish council level is that it is a space for everyone. And one of the biggest skills or attributes you bring to a parish council meeting is your knowledge and passion for your community. Now, you have officers, people like myself, the clerk, etc. We're there to help make sure that the infrastructure is in place for you to move that forward. Because, standing orders, etc., can be a bit of a minefield for the new incumbent. But all you're asked to bring to the table in the first instance is passion for your community.
Absolutely. And again, just to quote somebody else, I think it was the former mayor of New York, Cuomo, who talked about all politics being local. But on the issue of the barriers to town and parish councils, I mean, unlike, for example, some of the bigger councils, the super councils, councillors aren't paid. So, you can naturally see, can't you, how these are roles that are more obtainable, shall we say, by those who are in retirement, maybe on a pension, than, for example, families in their 20s, 30s and 40s where they're doing the school run and they've got other commitments. I mean, do you think something should happen around trying to facilitate more involvement, potentially paying parish councillors, or do you think that's a step too far?
Well, again, I think you raise an interesting point, because really it comes down to a general lack of knowledge of what's there already and how to use it.
Yeah.
So we can already pay parish councillors allowances,
right,
just like we can at district and county level.
Mm-hmm.
That already exists. It's been in place for about 12, 14 years now.
Right.
Very few use it. So again, the way I look at it is, if we are asking people to give up part of their work time, then there's no reason why that can't be recompensed, because it is for the benefit of that community. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing that's been really important in terms of accessibility is the ability to have meetings virtually.
Yes.
At the moment, that the regulations close on the 7th of May, which means that for the moment, after the 7th of May, we no longer have the power to do that. That's really important, because obviously during COVID it's been helpful. But if you imagine people with accessibility issues, if you imagine people with caring responsibilities, being able to access meetings virtually, we really need to keep that.
And as you say, it is by definition more accessible then, because if it means an individual doesn't have to leave the home, they don't, for example, they are younger and got parental responsibilities, have to necessarily arrange that childcare as well. So I think that's a really good point. It'd be fascinating to see actually whether the government does allow local government to continue to meet in a virtual forum, if that's the most appropriate way. But also, of course, there's arguably nothing that beats the council chamber. I speak as somebody that once spent 4 years as a local councillor. Just a final question from me then, Jackie. You've been really generous with your time, and going viral a few weeks ago, so to speak, on the internet must have been quite a sensation for you and for your husband and for the rest of your extended family. What's next for Jackie Weaver? I mean, what's the next instalment we can expect from you? I mean, I think I tuned into a radio show on another channel earlier, and you were talking about your new dance music collaboration. I mean, this Jackie Weaver knows no bounds when it comes to your Twilight career move.
I think the Twilight bit was a bit harsh. But, okay,
maybe I'm sounding like one of those parish Handforth parish councillors now. I'll probably get lots of emails telling me off about that. Apologies. Go on then. Tell me about your new career.
But yeah, the CD, I don't know if you call it a CD, a track, I think you call it these days.
A dance track, I think I saw. Yeah. What's that about?
And, yeah, that was fabulous. Really good fun. I mean, that was the other thing about it, good fun. But even that has a kind of message in it, because part of the chorus for it is about make a change. Back to encouraging people to get involved, to make a change. And then there's a book coming out, I hope, in June.
Wow.
And it will be, it hasn't got a working title at the moment, but in effect it will be Jackie Weaver's Book of Common Sense.
Sounds fantastic. I think you should set up your own ministry of common sense as well. You could be the new Minister for Common Sense. That would go down, I'm sure, very well. Jackie, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on Skills World Live. And we shall follow the track release and indeed the book release with huge interest. But she'll come back on and talk about the Common Sense book at some point in the future. Thanks so much for joining us.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show with Tom Bewick.
Been thinking about you, I just couldn't wait to see. Fling my arms around you as we fall in ecstasy. Ooh, sometimes the truth is harder than the pain inside. Yeah. Ooh, sometimes it's the broken heart that decides. It's not the way that you caress me, toy with my affection. My sense of emptiness you fill with your desire. Climb in bed beside me, we can lock the world outside. Touch me, satisfy me, warm your body next to mine. Ooh, sometimes the truth is harder than the pain inside. Yeah, ooh, sometimes it's the broken heart that decides.
Alas, it's time now to bring the curtains down on tonight's opening show. Do tell all your friends we're now broadcasting in visual form exclusively at skillsworldlive.com. And don't forget to tune in to next week's programme when we'll be debating the impact of the pandemic on lost learning. I'll be talking to the former Education Secretary Lord Baker and Ray Tooth at Villiers Park, both of whom have some pretty strong views on the subject. You can also hear from Rod Bristow, the man who has just wrapped up 35 years of service, the education company giant Pearson. In the meantime, folks, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you again next week.
Remember to subscribe to Skills World Live at fenews.co.uk or just download the show from any one of your favourite podcasting sites, including iTunes, Spotify and Spreaker. Your world, Skills World.